Welcome back. I'm the INTENSIVD, a double board certified intensivist, here to give you an inside look into the intensive care unit. I post videos every Tuesday and Friday. Tuesday videos are a little bit more educational and topics directly related to the intensive care unit. Friday is a little bit more laid back, a little bit more fun, and today we're going to do a reaction video. The video we're reacting to is episode 2 in the new Demi Lovato DocuSeries called Dancing with the Devil. And I have not watched this episode yet, but I was told that she discusses her stay in the intensive care unit. So I will be making comments based off of the information she tells us. I'm not going to speculate about any of her health conditions. And something else I'd like to know is I just watched episode 1. She talks a lot about mental health. I am not a mental health professional, so I'm going to stay in my lane and talk about intensive care. If you think this is a video where I'm going to shame Demi Lovato for her overdose, then you can leave, because this is a very serious topic that she's opening up about, and I'm just going to comment on the intensive care unit experience that she discusses. So she has some trigger warnings here, and this video will be the same since we're reacting to it. And I'll leave some resources in my description as well.
So the morning of the overdose, Demi had really wanted to make this doctor's appointment. So I got over there extra early to wake her up for it. Her door was closed. So whenever her door was closed, I kind of just took it as a hint, like, hey, just knock. So I knocked. Natalie, her chef at the time, she had just arrived, and I heard her in the kitchen, so I went down and talked to her for a little bit. And then I went back upstairs and I knocked again. At this point, I was kind of just like, okay, we're gonna be late. I opened the door really slowly. And it was really dark and cold in her room. And I kind of got chills, honestly. I thought that she was just drunk or hungover. So I kind of started to like nudge her a little bit, like, hey, like, let's get up now, like it's time to go. She wasn't really moving. She was like drooling. I called Max Lee, security. She's not waking up. She's not really responding. I don't really know what to do.
I rang security and I said, Jordan just called me in a panic. I need you to go into the room now and tell me everything you see. She was propped up, vomit everywhere, but she was on her back, which isn't good. So I told him, put her on her side, clear her throat, and I'm on my way.
By that point,
So he was recommending taking her off her back onto her side, which I'm sure you may have heard that when somebody's vomiting a lot, we don't want them to get that into their lungs. So there's still the chance of getting it into their lungs on their side by, clearing their mouth out and trying to do the best you can to prevent what we call aspiration, or, her choking on her own vomit. Is recommended that you put her on her side.
So more people had started to arrive at the house. And I'm just kind of like, do I call 911?
Yep.
Like, what do I do?
You call 911.
So I called, and I just remember sneaking downstairs to make the phone call because I didn't want to get in trouble for calling 911. While I was on the call, someone told me to tell the operator, no sirens.
Hang in there, okay? We're on our way. I'll let you know when they're outside. You should be hearing the sirens real soon.
Wait, no sirens, please, right?
No. This is a medical emergency. I don't have control over that. Well, this is definitely a medical emergency for her.
I was quite impressed with Jordan's handling it. I couldn't care what anyone thought. Get an ambulance there.
The ambulance came. They came upstairs to her room. They got their Narcan out, trying to really just bring her back to life.
So Narcan is a reversal agent for opioids. So a lot of times in opiate overdoses in the hospital and outside the hospital, we'll give Narcan to compete with the opioids or with those receptors to try to, wake someone up. And like I said in my previous ventilator video, the opiates can also slow down your respiratory rate. So try to increase their respiratory rate so they're not holding on to as much carbon dioxide in their body.
There was one point where she turned blue, like her whole body completely turned blue. And yeah, I was just like, oh, she's dead for sure. Yeah, it was the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Her oxygen levels, when she came to the hospital, they were dangerously low, and they were trending down. There were 70%. Someone of her health and age, we expect to be closer to 100%. Time is brain, is what we like to say, and then the longer you go with the brain being starved of essential nutrients, the longer it's injured, the more difficult is the recovery.
It was like a horror movie.
Yeah, so as the neurologist said, the longer you go in a what we call hypoxic state, somebody whose blood levels of oxygen are low, that can affect the brain. Kind of wondering if they intubated her at the scene or en route, because it seems kind of strange to me that if somebody, they didn't say if she responded to Narcan or not, but it sounded like she didn't. So I'm curious if they intubated her, try to establish an airway en route, because that's a better way to try to deliver oxygen. And like I've discussed in my ventilator video, a lot of times drug overdoses, you do end up on a ventilator to support your breathing.
They put her in ICU. She had a tube in her neck that was taking her blood into a machine, cleaning it, and then putting it back into her neck.
So I'm currently editing this video, but I wanted to add this just because I misspoke when I talked about dialysis. So what her mom is describing here is dialysis. I was under the assumption that she was receiving continuous dialysis. They never mentioned if she's getting intermittent hemodialysis, which is usually a couple hours a day, or if she's getting continuous dialysis, which is 24/7. But either way, she's getting dialysis because her kidneys are failing. She has kidney injury and they're not working properly, so she needs the dialysis machine to do the job of the kidneys. So in these cases, we emergently place a central line dialysis catheter in the neck, in the big vein that leads to the heart, and hook them up to the machine that way, like she described.
And as a parent, you're watching all of her blood come out of her body into a machine and come back. I asked the doctor, I said, what happens if she pulls out that tube in the middle of the night or when we're not watching her? And he actually kind of laughed and he said, that tube's not coming out, it's sewn into
Yeah,
her.
we suture it down.
I actually don't think people realize how bad it actually was. I had 3 strokes. I had a heart attack. I suffered brain damage from the strokes. I can't drive anymore, and I have blind spots in my vision. So sometimes when I go to pour a glass of water, I'll totally miss the cup because I can't see it anymore. I also had pneumonia because I asphyxiated, and multiple organ failure.
So like we were saying earlier, somebody who has low levels of oxygen in their blood, the brain's not getting enough oxygen. She also said that she had a stroke, which, she didn't go into detail, but typically that affects one specific part of the brain, doesn't get enough blood, so those cells die and that part of the brain no longer functions. And as she said, she can't drive anymore. She has blind spots, so that part of the brain had been affected by the stroke.
I am not saying that I have not used needles, but that night I wasn't injecting it, I was smoking it, which is another reason why I was so shocked when I woke up in the hospital, because I was like, no, I'm not injecting it. I can't overdose on it.
That's not true.
At the end of the day, if you do too much of anything, it's going to kill you.
Right.
I was like, all right, I need to get help.
Typically, when we hear about drug-related ingestions, you know, they come to us too late.
I'm really lucky to be alive.
For sure.
My doctors said that, like, I had 5 to 10 more minutes.
I mean, that's difficult to say because everyone's body is different and everyone reacts to low oxygen levels differently. Some people, you know, it only takes a couple minutes for them to be neurologically devastated. We'll have people who code and their hearts only stop for 5 minutes and we're doing good CPR, but their brains just don't come back from it. So it's hard to say if really she had 5 to 10 more minutes, but it did sound like she was in a dire state when her assistant found her.
And had my assistant not come in, I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah.
I have to
Her
give
assistant
thanks
saved
to
her
the
life.
doctors that took care of her, and
For sure.
she has several. One was working on her brain, one was working on her kidneys, one was working on her eyes, and so they were trying to figure out a lot in that first 24 hours.
What the dialysis does in this case is it removes the toxins and the fluid accumulation and prevents the brain from swelling and becoming more injured.
They came to me and said we can either go to the neck or we can go in down here.
I remember them trying to sew it into my groin, and it was so painful, even on whatever drugs I was on.
They gave the two options, and I said, please try this part first, for obvious reasons.
So you can either go into the neck or the groin, like they said. There's a big vessel in the neck, big vessel in the groin. My preference is the neck because the groin is, we consider dirtier, so it has higher risk of infection. There's a lot of debate in the medical community about whether that's actually true or not, but my preference is the neck. So yeah, but it sounds like they had issues with inserting the catheter in her groin for whatever reason. It could have been the way her anatomy is. It could have been, you know, positional. It's hard to say, but it sounds like they ultimately did go into the jugular vein in the neck.
I actually had to schedule another meeting to discuss what had happened because a lot of being in the hospital was so blurry for me. I wanted to go back and really understand the full magnitude of what had happened. The first moment that I saw Demi in the hospital, when she first opened her eyes, she looked at me, I grabbed her hand and I said, I'm here and I love you, just to let her know I had gotten to the hospital. And she looked me dead in the eye and she said, who is that?
Wow.
Just something you never want to hear your sister say.
The areas of her brain that were initially affected were the vision centers, back of the brain. The idea was to mitigate the damage and to provide the best opportunity.
Oh yeah, so you can see in the back of the brain there that she had some areas of infarct, and like her neurologist said, that's the part of the brain that affects your vision.
For recovery.
And this is an MRI.
I think people can understand picking up a joint. What gets harder for people to understand is the harder drugs. How does that even happen? How do you even do something like that?
So my cocktail before I got sober was Coke and Xanax together. It was an upper and a downer, and I loved the combination.
Wow, so yeah, like she said, cocaine is an upper, it's a stimulant. It's a stimulant, so it can affect, and that alone can give you heart attacks and strokes. It compresses the vessels, it gives you high blood pressure. I've seen it cause strokes, heart attacks, and a lot of people just assume that, you know, you have to be a persistent user to have these things happen, but it can take only one use for you to have consequences. And Xanax is benzodiazepine. It's a downer. It has a similar effect on the body as alcohol does. So it's a little bit of a sedative. So it's interesting that she took those at the same time. So I don't really know what your sensation in your body would be if you take both of these things that kind of compete with each other and have different effects. But that is very high risk behavior.
Lied her, but she had drunkenly hit him up that night.
He had given her drugs. He told her some different iteration of what they were. I don't think he mentioned it was laced with fentanyl.
He gave me what I assume now to be fentanyl. But
yeah, so fentanyl is a cousin of heroin. It's an opioid, and it, you know, can cause these overdoses and any effects that heroin has. It can suppress the breathing, it can make you sleepier or unconscious. So he gave her something that sounds like she didn't know had an opiate in it.
When they found me, I was naked. I was blue. I was literally left for dead after he took advantage of me. It actually wasn't until maybe a month after my overdose that I realized, hey, you weren't in any state of mind to make a consensual decision.
So just to talk briefly about consent, somebody who is under the influence cannot consent. So she did not consent that night. She did not have the capacity to. She was not in the right mind, so she did not consent.
It's not very common that you'd see someone with a drug-related overdose with this degree of multi-organ failure that would come out of it relatively unscathed. And
that's true. A lot of times when people have drug overdoses and multiple organs failure, they at least have some type of long-term issue. I know she said that she has a lot of visual deficits, but it sounds like she's not dialysis dependent. She didn't have acute liver failure. She's very lucky. So some final thoughts. It was interesting to hear her perspective of what her hospital stay was like. Like I said, typically for somebody who overdoses on opiates, it sounds like she had some other substances as well. They'll end up in the intensive care unit on a ventilator, plus or minus kidney failure, plus or minus liver failure. It sounds like she also had heart attacks and strokes on top of it. So she had pretty complex hospital course, and it sounds like she's doing pretty well, all things considered. So I'm probably going to end up cutting a lot of the non-ICU stuff they discussed out of this reaction video, just because I wanted to focus on her ICU stay and her hospitalization. So I'm going to link the full video down below. I'm also going to link some resources that she posted in her video and description for mental health resources. But if you like this type of video, let me know down below. I'll be back next week with another life support video on Tuesday, as well as a different reaction video on Friday. If you're interested in hearing more about the intensive care unit, seeing more reaction videos like this, don't forget to subscribe, and you can also follow me on Instagram at @theintensemd.